spoken in a diverse community that from early on gave me a glimpse of how different cultures affected people's perceptions of the world. Naturally, I was eager to communicate with these people, and the more questions I asked, the more I noticed the wide variety of cultural differences are influenced by the nuance of language. Someone help with that. Oh, thank you. As the famous author Charles Dickens once stated, a wonderful fact to reflect upon, that every human creature is constituted that profound secret and mystery to every other. So how do we break through the mist and unveil a better understanding of each other? The answer is communication. The answer is language. Linguistics is a growing passion of mine, and although I grew up in what is considered a traditional American family, white, middle class, English speaking only, I can see all around me that 21st century America is becoming increasingly different from that model. I want to keep up with the world. I didn't want to live in a bubble. So 2 years ago, I decided to start learning Mandarin Chinese. And quickly my perceptions of the world and people around me began to change. The more Mandarin I learned, the more I realized that to truly understand and become fluent in a language, you must not only know the definitive meanings of words, but their connotative meaning and the culture behind the language. Research shows that around 6,000 to 7,000 languages spoken worldwide, 6,000 to 7,000 different ways to see the world, 6,000 to 7,000 different ways to describe the world. The most commonly spoken languages are first Mandarin, then Spanish, and coming in third, English. Each of these languages has its own implied meanings. As the author of Clockwork Orange, Anthony Burgess, once said, translation is not a matter of words only, it is a matter of making intelligible an entire culture. One example of implied meanings would be the phrase, she's frugal, versus she's cheap. Now, when you call someone frugal, it's not exactly an insult. In fact, it can even be taken as a compliment. She's frugal implies that maybe you're responsible or careful. However, she's cheap is very different. Although cheap and frugal hold the same definitive meaning, they hold a different connotative meaning. Cheap is often taken as an insult. Underneath this, we have slang, which is strongly tied with symbolism. A good example of symbolism is physical association with emotion. In English, we tend to associate the heart with love. However, let's say you're an Armenian speaker, and Armenians don't limit their description of love to the heart. In fact, they also love each other like their stomach or their lungs, and it wouldn't be taboo to say, I love you like my liver. Insults also vary with visual connotation. A very common Chinese insult is 没有面子. Literally translated, this means you have no face. However, if we translated it connotatively or emotionally, it would sound more like you have no shame. Here you can clearly see the subtlety of language in all of these phrases. Another amazing example of symbolism would be color. For example, white. In Western cultures, white is often associated with purity, hope, life, and is worn to weddings or communions. However, in traditional Asian cultures, white is associated with death and mourning, and is worn to funerals. Another example would be how we assign feeling to color. In English, a common phrase is, I'm feeling blue. Now, when I say I'm feeling blue, you obviously don't literally think I am blue. You probably assume I'm saying I'm feeling lonely or sad or even depressed. However, if you try to say this to a non-English speaker, let's say in India, they probably wouldn't really understand it. Conversely, the color blue in India represents Lord Krishna, God of divine joy and protector of humanity. Their association with blue is almost always a positive one. So delving deeper into language, we also realize that the structure of language as the world. Pretty much what this is saying is language directly affects the way we perceive things. This is called linguistic relativity. It was originally hypothesized by Benjamin Ward, a famous linguist, and later solidified by scientific experimentation. Today, to help you better understand this idea, I'm going to perform some of these experiments with you. The first experiment is called the Baba-Kiki experiment. Now, in your mind quietly, I'd like you to answer my question. Which is the Baba and which is the Kiki? Now, with a show of hands, how many of you decided that the rounder shape was the Baba? Okay, almost all of you. I suspected this. This test supports the idea that language has direct influence on how we perceive things visually. Now, there's no logical reason as to why one would be the Baba or the Kiki. We just naturally seem to associate the softer B sound with a softer shape, and the rougher K sound with the more jagged shape. The next experiment I will conduct to you was also performed by linguists at Stanford University and MIT. So like before, I'd like you to answer this question in your mind. Imagine this red point here represents today. Where would you place tomorrow, and where would you place yesterday? So I'm assuming most of you decided that tomorrow and yesterday would be either to the left or the right of the shape, or in front or behind. Now, what linguists did at Stanford University and MIT is they took two different groups. One group was of English speakers, and the other one was made up of Mandarin speakers. Now, English speakers pretty much always said that tomorrow would be to the left or the right, or behind or the front. However, Mandarin speakers had a very different answer. 8 times more than English speakers, they said that tomorrow would be below the point, and yesterday would be above the point. So why is this? Well, the answer is language. They simply describe time differently than we do. Mandarin speakers, or English speakers, tend to describe time with horizontal spatial metaphors. For example, the worst is behind us, the best is ahead of us, while Mandarin speakers use both horizontal and spatial metaphors, horizontal and vertical spatial metaphors. They see time as rising up from the ground like a spring of water, with future events below and past events above. So, what exactly is my point here? Learning a new language and culture can change our way of thinking, and how can immersing yourself in a new language or culture change your world? Well, when you watch the news, when you interact with people from other cultures, or you watch a foreign film, I'm sure there's many moments where you're thinking, what? I urge you to take a step back and ask yourself, is the unfamiliar statement or behavior really in disagreement with your world view, or is it simply a language and cultural difference? I think if we all ask ourselves this question a little more often, and learn to understand each other's cultural nuances without first passing judgment, we will have a much more productive and peaceful world. So I'd like to end this talk with a phrase that is practically universal in every language, and it goes a bit like this. 谢谢, tomo arigato, muchos gracias, merci beaucoup, salamat, danke, thank you very much.